Welcome to the Always for the New Age podcast, where we weave the threads of traditional living into the tapestry of modern day life. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm a naturopath, herbalist, and passionate plant lover here to discuss topics such as daily ritual, intentional living, witchcraft, herbal astrology, plus sharing interviews with inspiring guests, and so much more. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a podcast review if you enjoy my content. I wish to honour and express my deepest gratitude to the traditional custodians of the unceded land on which I live and record, the Wanjerabara people. I want to acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging, and their continued connection to the land, sea and community. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hello and welcome back to the Always for the New Age podcast. I'm your host Hannah, and today I have the amazing pleasure of talking with mama, naturopath, teacher and fellow witch, Holly Moffitt. So hi Holly.
Hello, thanks for having me on today.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I'm really excited about today's topic because we're going to actually be talking about witchcraft for children, which is something I've been wanting to cover on here for so long. And I'm obviously only a new mum myself, so while I do have a bit of knowledge in the area, it's not something that I've been able to put into practice very much myself. So yet. And I'm hoping to learn some real gems from you today. So first, I just thought we could talk about where you started and our audience can get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you. So I am a naturopath, and I have been for a really long time. I feel like my journey started really early. Right from teenagehood, I was always, the woo girl, interested in all things alternative health. And it was just a really natural progression to go straight into naturopathy out of high school, and practicing from there. Obviously, I have my own really strong practice as well. I've got really strong herbalist roots, and my lifestyle really aligns to that kind of old ways of thinking, cottagecore, all of those beautiful sort of, homesteading kind of ways. So,
yeah, amazing. And how did you find naturopathy? I'm curious because I actually found it in one of those career books that they give you in high school. How did you come across it?
I did too. Yes,
No
that was the
way.
same for me. And I didn't really know anything about it. Obviously, I had an interest in kind of natural healing and all these things. But yes, I was the same. I was looking through the catalog and saw this advertisement, and I thought, well, this is absolutely what I want to do and the things that I'm really interested in. So it was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, and you do some quite interesting things with your practice as well. Like I don't know if you weave in ecstatic dance with your practice or if it's separate from. I'm sure it's kind of related in some way, but do you specialize in anything in particular?
Yeah, I have done, obviously I graduated a really long time ago, back in 2008. So my practice has ebbed and flowed with my special areas. If anyone speaks astrology, I'm a Sagittarius. I actually have 4 placements in Sagittarius. So my learning is relentless, and my interest, I always like to have a few different things on the go. So at the moment, I'm in private practice. I'm also teaching at the college. And yes, I do facilitate ecstatic dance. That's one of my pet projects. I adore ecstatic dance. I adore somatic movement, and I adore weaving children back into these spaces. So a lot of the ecstatic dance where I live, I'm really lucky. There's a lot available to me, but none that you can really bring children into. And I was always really interested in this concept. Old ceremony spaces, when we're looking more in village kind of, or this interweaving in society, would have our elders, our children, everyone would just be all in. It would be a harvest season and everyone's all in. But now our ceremony spaces have become quite removed, and that's wonderful. Sometimes you just need some quiet time and some time kind of out of that space. But at the same time, we're also creating this little barrier for our children being involved in these spaces. So I actually started an ecstatic dance that is family friendly, so that one, our children can come and be part of it. And another thing is, it's really wonderful for our children to come and watch us practice these self-care techniques and process our healing and our feelings in a really healthy way, watch us journey through what it is to, move through an ecstatic dance set. Maybe there's tears, maybe there's joy, maybe there's, more physical expressions, or maybe anger might be coming out of our bodies, and they can, watch this, and children learn brilliantly through imitation. And then when it's
Yeah.
just a fun time, the children get to come and just have a big party. And I know my daughter loves to dance with me. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but it's such a beautiful way for children to be interwoven into these ceremony aspects.
Absolutely. I think that's really cool. I've always found ecstatic dance intimidating. I don't know why. I think I'm not like a huge dancer myself, and I know that the approach should absolutely be not perfection. It's not about, being able to be good at dancing, right? It's about
Mm.
moving your body and moving stuck energy and emotion. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Ecstatic dance has no set moves, and even the music itself can be really all over the place. And the idea is just to move your body in whatever way feels good. An
Mm.
invitation I give to a lot of people is, sometimes you really feel like dancing in a way that you'd imagine dance to be. And sometimes you just feel like leaning against a wall and maybe moving your arm up and down a little bit, whatever feels good for you to move. Is the way that you're meant to be moving that day. So, and children can be really great teachers in that way too. You put any kind of beat on and watch your child move and see how they move.
Totally.
They inherently know if there's like a really solid baseline, they know to kind of stamp their feet. If it's a bit more dreamy, they might be rolling around on the ground or doing whatever they do. They know what to do.
Totally. That is really cool. And you have one daughter, correct?
I do, yes.
Yeah. And how old is she now?
She has just had her 8th birthday. So
8.
yes, which is interesting because I started sort of her official weaving, I'd say, into my process on her first birthday. So the first year was just a bit of a free for all. But then I really
Mm.
started anchoring some traditions with her from her first birthday. So she is now then done 7 cycles of, the wheels of
Yeah.
the year and all these different things. So she's very versed these days.
That is so amazing. And I don't know how much our audience actually knows about that really crucial time of the birth to 7 period, and how much, how much of their patterning and everything is ingrained in that period of time. So
Mm.
that's really special that you're able to do that so young. And I think that's such a gift that practitioners like naturopaths and spiritual workers can offer their children that they don't get in other places, is that really crucial first to 7 year gap, and being able to weave in the spiritual, weave in the herbal, weave in the old practices. I think that's really incredible. And you would have had her while you were studying, correct?
No, oh gosh,
No?
no,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no, no. So I finished studying in 2008. So
Okay. Okay.
I practiced for, oh gosh, maybe 10 years before I had her, and then I went on mat
Okay.
leave for a little bit, and yeah, now I rejoined practice maybe when she was 3.
Okay. So how long have you been a naturopath for now?
I think that puts us at 15 years, if that's off the top of my
Okay.
head. My maths
Right.
could be wrong, but we're ballpark.
Yeah, that's amazing. So witchcraft for children. So
Mhm.
do you use the term witch to describe yourself? Is that a term that you claim?
No, it doesn't tend to be. It's for me, I land it a bit more user discretion. And for her as well, I offer up and I haven't labeled her and I allow her to play with different labels herself too.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe an area of where this would land and how it all sits for her. So I'm offering her all these things at her age. And sometimes she'll come to me and say, that she's a witch, or sometimes she'll declare that she's a fairy or a goblin, or it's really to the day. She will tell anyone that asks that her mummy is a witch. She definitely
Oh.
claims that for me. And it's funny that, if someone asks me, oh, she said you're a witch. I'm like, well, I'm a naturopath, and they kind of go, oh, okay, that kind of
That's
tracks. So I think
yeah.
it tracks for people, but it's a very loose term. I use it very loosely, and I heard someone talk about witchcraft as like spicy psychology, and I really love that as a
Yeah.
concept. And if we put this through the lens of, if you're making a spell jar, it's you creating this laser focus for this outcome. And in a lot of witchcraft teachings, it's not enough, just to wish and hope and create these spells, you need to be doing the work and aligning yourself and making sure you're in alignment as well so that these outcomes can be reached. So I love that as a concept of this spicy psychology. It also
Absolutely.
sits really well with me too of this, who are you, and how our identity sits is often the the stacking up of evidence that we can see on the way that we live our lives. So if you are someone who goes to the gym every day, you're someone, you have got this internal monologue of, I go to the gym every day. I am someone who exercises. This is
Mm.
part of my sort of identity. So then if we look at that, if we look at all these little witchcraft practices, and if we're doing them on a daily, weekly, seasonal basis, it all starts to mount this evidence as that is who you are in this moment. So
That's really cool. Spicy psychology. I haven't heard it framed that way before, but that is really interesting. And I think there is a lot of crossover, right? With so witchcraft as a practice too is not necessarily denoting a spiritual practice at all. It's denoting like a physical and almost psychological practice. And you know, witchcraft is almost another form of prayer too. So I think that's really, yeah, it's the concept I want to look into more myself now. It's really
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, it's super interesting, and it sits really well with my daughter. She definitely understands that concept. And if we talk about that 7 years and that early foundational self-care practice, herbal practice, and all these things, she definitely has a really strong dialogue now.
Mm.
Even when she doesn't have the words for it. Like one time she was just done, social battery done, and I offered a TV show, and she said, it sounds good and I'm sure I would like it, but right now I don't want to watch anything new. And we know that, we comfort watch Gilmore Girls
Yes.
because we just like no new input, just want to watch the thing that I absolutely know. So she's got this little patterning that she understands, these self-care, she's got this amazing toolkit
That is
that
going to
she
be
can
so
ask for
valuable.
things. Hmm.
Absolutely. And just like knowing and understanding how she feels. And then, like, so she's got the language for it, but even just understanding that in the first place is huge.
Absolutely.
This world does not facilitate the understanding and acceptance of emotions and feelings. So I think that's really beautiful that she was able to say that. That is so cool. Definitely goals. I hope I can do that with my little guy. Uh, so children and witchcraft. So what does that
Mm,
look like in your family? And I guess was this something you were doing for a long time before you had her too? And it was a
yeah.
natural progression of weaving it in.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's something that was self-taught for me, like right back from my teenage years, and already, a strong language and a practice that I already had. And then it was putting it through a filter that makes sense to children. So again, if we talk about that children and ceremony, maybe we're not having a 1 hour elaborate meditation and, you know, full on ritual with live flames and all these different things.
Yeah.
I've needed to tailor it to her. But every year she gets older, I can bring more and more elements in. So every year I build the practice. So it's the same kind of spiral, but there's more and more and more coming in every year. So it's also really wonderful. She goes to a Steiner school, and a lot of the language and a lot of the ceremony and a lot of the practices are very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So that was wonderful for her, I think, to see these home teachings, little things like we've always called the moon Mother Moon and the sun Father Sun, and they use that same language at her Steiner school, so that she wouldn't have got that anywhere else. So she can see this
No.
language is modeled into different spaces for her, which is really helpful.
Yeah, that really integrates it beautifully for her to be able to go outside of the home and still have it be in existence, like have it be a thing that is really beautiful. I love Steiner schools for that reason. So what does it look like now? What did it look like when she was young? How did you figure out how to filter it and make it palatable and appropriate for a young
Mm.
child? What, like, you obviously are very intuitive about the way you work, but what were some of the ways that you celebrated through the year? And should we call your practice more of an old ways tradition instead of witchcraft?
I will respond to any term,
Okay,
so
okay.
happy to switch between those two. I'll share, I think the most helpful thing I can do is really share my story,
Hmm.
rather than like a how-to guide,
Yeah.
because yeah, this is, I think, women in particular learn very well through stories and hearing each other's stories and seeing
Hmm.
what resonates and maybe what doesn't. And like, the most cornerstone, I think, part of this whole practice has been seasonal shifts.
Hmm.
And seasonal living for me was really, really important before I had my daughter. And then it's been one of the strongest anchors that I've put through her practice this entire time. And for a lot of it was happening around her, but now she is a big part of a lot of it. So we
Hmm.
have like quite an extensive seasonal practice. So every time when we've got the seasonal crossover that will be coming up to the autumn to winter crossover, we redecorate our entire house. So I have a box for each season. And so things like we'll rotate toys, we'll rotate books, we'll rotate decorations. Even like we've got a lot of like cloths and scarves and things all over the place. So all of the color from the previous season will come down and be washed and packed away. And then all of the decorations for the new season will go up. And that can take us, 2 weekends to kind of go through and do that practice. But that is that representation of the changing of the season. And
Hmm.
it's her visual representation of, yeah, all the autumnal colors come down and all the winter colors and all the winter decorations
Yeah.
come up. So that's something that we do together.
That's really cool. And that's something I also have done for a very long time, and will do with little Finn as he grows. I think that's such a, like, beautiful physical, because I think with children, I don't know if you find this, having that physical representation of something can be really helpful, like that manifestation, something they can touch, look at, see, even taste if we're cooking seasonal foods. And do you
Absolutely.
do this like summer, autumn, winter, spring?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even, her book, she's got quite an extensive book collection, and it's such a fun day that day to bring out all of those books that have been packed away. And all the books will be on that color scheme. And then also the stories will be representative of that season too. So, easily to focus. Summer books will be a lot of, going to the beach and celebrations and going and doing things, whereas the winter books might be more about, quiet books about storing things away, or autumn winter we've got our acknowledgement of ancestors, so it might be books around aging or transitions, or any different things that we've accumulated during the time that speak to that season. We come
Hmm.
through it in a cyclical kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. Really beautiful. And
Mm.
so, what else has that looked like as she's grown? What are some of the other traditions that you guys have weaved through your
Mm.
life?
Mm. So we definitely celebrate all of the major equinoxes, and Sabbats, as she calls them, special occasion days.
Oh.
And I'm not fussy on where that lands. So obviously we've got our sort of calendar dates for those, and then there's the astrological dates for these. I will just look at our planner and I'll
Hmm.
actually find a day on where that lands. Really good example is we've just celebrated Samhain. That is actually her birthday. And
How special.
it's just not a great fit to have, the Day of the Dead basically on a birthday. So I just move those a week away from each other
Right.
so we can have a strong practice of, acknowledging
Yeah.
and celebrating Samhain, but it's not, a bit of a downer for her birthday. We just separate those out.
Yeah.
So I just kind of declare to her when the special occasion day will be. And they are things that have built over the years, but now that we're repeating them a lot, there's a lot that's the same. So
Mm.
I established the foods that we'd be eating on those special occasion days really early on, and then just repeated year in and year out. So she knows if there's particular baked goods or treats that are associated with that, she knows now what they're going to be, and she's psyched about them.
Yeah.
So depending on the celebration and the flavor, we'll maybe do craft
Hmm.
or do something involving nature. If it's the summer solstice, we're going to go to the beach or go for a swim that day. That's really
Yeah.
eat mangoes with your hands, chasing butterflies out in the sun, whereas if we're looking at, Yule, we're going to have a roast and there's lots of beautiful little activities associated with that, like walking a spiral, or, if there's any little ceremonies and things. Again, as the years progress, those shift and change depending on what's happening, and we might have craft around, or different stories. I'll find different stories to read at those times. We'll always have a special dinner. And then one of her favorite things is I've always infused music through these practices. And so we'll have special music maybe playing through the day or with that dinner. And now she loves having a dance after dinner. That is something that wasn't really intentional, but just kind of
Right.
wove its way into. That was something that she really picked up on. She really likes, I think hobbity kind of like fiddle based or flute music. Like she loves
Yeah.
that. And she's like, it's time for a jig. So now we often, after these dinners, we'll need to have a jig, which the cat thinks is just insane. But that's what we
Yeah.
do. Mm.
Oh, I love a jig too. That's my favorite kind of music.
Mm-hmm,
A little bit of
mm-hmm.
East Pointers even. I just
Yeah.
love a good jig. Hi everybody, it's Hannah jumping into this section of the episode to let you know that this week's episode is actually brought to you by my own little family business, Grown Botanicals. At Grown Botanicals, we offer really beautifully formulated, handcrafted, organic, herbal tonic blends. So we do the actual tonic blends that are medicinal mushroom and cacao blend that you mix with warm milk and have as a hot drink every day. That really supports your immune system, your energy, your gut health, your hormones, your nervous system, you name it. It's pretty much good for everything. We have 4 different flavors of those. And then we also have really mindfully crafted organic herbal tea blends. We do high potency, essential oil free, infused herbal oils and salves as well. And then we have a great selection from really incredible Australian small businesses. So we have some locally sourced organic beeswax candles and just so much more. So I encourage you to jump onto the website and have a play. You might happen to see our new amber glass tonic blend jars. So this is my peppermint potion here. And then we also have the refill bags, which look like this. And this original tonic blend is actually one of our cult favorites. So this was the original for a reason. It has a new updated blend of 10 different medicinal mushrooms in here. It's sweetened with organic maple sugar, as all of our blends are. And I really encourage you to give it a try. If you would like to try something out for the first time, definitely use the code OLDWAYS10, and you can go to www.grownbotanicals.com.au, or you can find the website linked below in the show notes or on Instagram. And I hope that you love them. I'd love to send you a little handwritten note and some beautiful rose petals with your order. And I hope to see your name pop up soon. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate the support, and we'll get back to the episode. So the spiral. So I know that that's something that shows up a lot in Steiner and Waldorf. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's in both.
Yeah.
Could you explain the spiral to me? Because I
Mm.
actually have never done any sort of ceremony with walking a spiral myself personally.
Yeah. So what I was just referencing there is a really common Yuletide tradition. And traditionally it's going to be branches of like pine trees and bits and pieces, and it's set out in this huge big arena, and you hold a candle basically and do a walk all the way into the middle of the spiral, and then you can spiral your way out. And in the middle is a space where you're really at the center point of, depending on what you've brought into it, potentially your ancestry circle, or if we're looking at, walking from the old year into the new year, and what light you want to bring through, what you want to leave behind, you can kind of choose your intention of the spiral, depending on what you want to do. And then we can do that journey out. So it's showing that journey in and journey out of the depths of our psyche. And so she has actually been able to do that at school, which has been really special. And when she was really little, I actually made a small tabletop version of little tiny branches, and we actually had little figurines. And so the little figurines walked to the center, and we had an electronic candle in the middle, so like these things have really shifted and changed to right now she can hold her own candle. She's trustworthy with a candle and all these things. So yeah, things ebb and flow. She also, is used to this practice and used to me asking a lot of these reflective questions of, what's been really fun, what are you enjoying at the moment, what has been a challenge. She can find these answers within herself and make wishes and set intentions. She's got quite a dialogue, so she can pick these things. Sometimes I help her, if I've been observing things have been potentially challenging for her, or things that I've picked up that she's articulating but maybe not quite honed in on, then that might be a process that we're talking through. So,
Yeah, fantastic. And so, do you guys work with stones, or do you have any tools that you work with when you
mm,
celebrate? Because there's so many different options. There's altar tiles. Do you build altars in the home? Is that part of
yes,
your practice?
it is. And we have a shared altar. So we have a big long table. It's probably about 1.5 meters long, and
Mm.
I have my half, she has her half, and we have shared objects in the middle. And we change that every season. And
Mm.
then it really like it's a working altar. So at the start of the season, for that first week, it looks beautiful and very much Pinterest worthy. And then by the end of the season, oh my goodness, because it also acts as a seasonal table. We've got seasonal decor all over the place. So depending of the season, what we found by the end of this 3 month season, like everything needs a good scrub down and a wash. Some things need to be returned to nature. Some things can be preserved, but there's feathers, shells, special sticks, like all manner of stones and special stones, interesting things, cones, like you name it, we've found it and dragged it in and decorated. Seasonal tables, or especially the altar, gets a big going over there.
Yeah.
Um, but on her side, there's always going to be, she has, some wands. She has a wand that she made herself. She's got a little cauldron. And so she
Cute.
can do spell work in there. And that's when we might be focusing in on an intention.
Mm.
If she's feeling a particular way about something, we might create a ceremony just to hold space for her and create maybe a spell jar, or, bless a talisman or something. And so she's got a sacred object or a sacred intention in that way. So that we do, and we ebb and flow, it really depends if she's needing something at the moment, if we do that. Of course, she has all of the crystals. She's a big, big crystal girly.
Okay.
Yeah, loves her crystals. And then, we've got all sorts of little things, like we have a cat. If the cat sheds whiskers, there's cat
Mm.
whiskers on the altar, all
Yeah.
number of different things. She also has a few of her own tarot decks now too. So
That was my
she has
next
a practice.
question.
Yeah, so she has a practice, and she's even got seasonal ones. But if it's autumn, maybe I've got the autumnal box of tarot deck on her side, but she might want a specific deck. She might go, no, I want to use the mermaid one today, and I'm not going to be stringent. Like, no,
You
we're
can't use
using
the
the
mermaids.
autumnal deck.
Yeah.
Mermaids are put away. Like, so I've got drawers. The altar has drawers, so we're often fossicking around finding things. Or she knows, I have several decks, and so she knows my decks, and she can pick and choose there, and we can have a little play around with them.
Yeah, I really love that you said that it's a working altar and it gets a lot of use. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, how frequently are you guys doing rituals, candle
Mm,
burnings,
yeah.
intention setting? Is it daily, weekly? Like, how often do you approach your altar and
Yeah.
work with it?
So the special occasion days are definitely
Mm-hmm.
anchored. Sometimes the moon,
Mm-hmm.
um, more from an observational point of view, we will notice. We often go for, after dinner walks or things. So we have um, a witnessing practice with the moons, and maybe if it's a full moon, we might want to do something, or if it's a dark moon, we might want to do something. Other than that, it's just whenever. So it really, really depends, and we just wait for inspiration to hit. If
Mm-hmm.
we have a need for things, she might say, I want to do a spell. And so I will make sure sometime in the next week we're going to make space for that and doing that. Or I might be really excited about something I've seen on TikTok or Pinterest or something and be like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
Or we might be in a bit of a vibe, like here we have the medieval fair, which is, we
Mm.
love cosplay. That's another thing we do. We go a lot of any kind of cosplay events we can go to, we do. So we might be really in the vibe, that we've gone to
Yeah.
cosplay. And so that might be a really heavy kind of working season. Maybe for that next month, we're going to be doing a lot more things because we're really in the flavor and in the vibe of it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
How
it really,
fun.
that completely depends.
Yeah, yeah. I think something that I've talked about before with like here on the podcast and with the people that listen is that I think witchcraft or a spiritual practice in this way, like an old ways tradition or something to do with that really grounded seasonal living, slow way is that it slows you down. And I think it is such an incredible way of bringing such presence and intentionality and slowness back to life when things can be so busy and we're rushing around. And I know that so many parents get caught up in that, right? It's almost synonymous these days with parenthood, is people just assume that you're constantly rushing and you don't have time, right? People are very focused on not having time. There's just no time or space. So do you have any tips or advice, or just, what you found, how you found that drive to create the space for your spiritual
Mm,
practice and raising your daughter with a spiritual practice?
yes. I I think when she was very young, or maybe just before she was born, I have a feeling it was in her first 2 years, I became really interested. No, it was definitely before this. I've always been interested in slow living and minimalism.
Mm-hmm.
And then once she was born, I did read a few books specifically around the concept of slow childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely had that intention. Also, she was then born a Taurus and quite introverted, with like a glaringly obvious social battery.
Right.
So she's just not going to do a fast based living. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not going to happen. So we have a lot of space, where, she's going to really prefer to spend a weekend at home just doing things together, the two of us. We don't really do extracurricular activities. Sometimes we do for a season and then we drop it off because it's just not serving her. So we do have a lot of extra space. In saying that, there is life happening around us. So these special occasion dinners can be something that I pull out in the evening. We don't always spend the day doing the crafts and the different things. So I will have really stripped back versions of these things sometimes when really my capacity is totally maxed out. I can chuck on a playlist for, Letha and go, this is the Letha playlist. This
Mm.
is what we're having for dinner, and put the drinks in a sparkly cup, like, and call it a day. And she's
Mm-hmm.
like stoked. She's like, yay, it's special occasion dinner. And because we've got that repetition too, I can offer the bells and whistles version or the really, really pared back version. And either way, it's going to be, we're good to go. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to kind of look any certain way. And it's certainly not going on Instagram.
Yeah.
There, sometimes these things look really presentable, and Pinterest, Instagram, like, the altar the day it's been done. And then after that, like, no, it's,
Yeah.
it's very, very humble thrown together. But to us, it makes a lot of sense and it works. So yeah,
Mm.
there's definitely pared back versions of all of these things. So
Yeah.
it's better to do it than to
Yeah.
have it be perfect. Mm.
Yeah, I think that perfectionism kills all of these beautiful experiences, because people would rather just, or they I don't think that they would rather, but they just find themselves not doing anything. It's like an all or nothing mentality. If it can't be perfect and Pinterest worthy, then it's not enough.
Yeah.
But the smallest things, like, there are definitely, especially last year, the majority of the Sabbats, I literally lit a candle.
Yeah.
Sometimes I got a meal made, but that was just me without a child yet. And so I think, yeah, that's really important as a message for parents. If you want to weave this in, it doesn't have to be huge and all the bells and whistles all the time. It just needs to be setting an intention. And I think a lot of this spiritual experience is based in observation too, right? It's that,
Yeah.
oh, look, they have been taking Finn out on our morning walks, and we walk under a couple of maple trees. And I keep showing him, look, they're more red today. They're more orange today. Look, there's even more of them that have turned, and talking about, and he's only 6 months, but like, just noticing, for adults and kids alike, noticing the seasons, how they change, can also be enough sometimes if they don't have the capacity for a huge thing, right?
Definitely. I want to jump back, to just leaning back on what you've done before, and then I want to talk about this observational practice because that's another huge part of what we
Mm.
do. But like I said, I started sort of this really intentional practice with her when she was 1, and I
Mm.
have a book, not a pretty book of shadows, like a binder book that's
Yeah.
written in my questionable writing. But every year I've written what extra things I've done, but I also have all the notes from the years past,
Wow.
which means it's the decision fatigue is gone. And like, it's not pretty. It's like
Mm.
there's dot points for like different foods or recipes or things, or activities or music or any different things. There's like a dot point list for me to
Yeah.
go and choose from. So that means maybe 1 year on one season, I had more time and capacity and like had fun on Pinterest one day.
Yeah.
And so I wrote heaps of things down. That's the other thing. I have Pinterest boards for every season.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a slow accumulation. So that's, the more work you can do for yourself when you're feeling good, that means
Yeah.
that the decision fatigue, the executive dysfunction, all those things are taken out and you can just pick one random thing rather than, oh, I have to pick something. What am I going to do?
Mm.
Previous you has maybe done it, or leaning on a book you've read or a creator that you follow, find someone else to kind of
Mm.
give you the option, and then you can kind of pick and choose from there. So
Mm-hmm.
that's super helpful. And in a year, I'm never going to hit each special occasion or each thing, as a full
Yeah.
bells and whistles. It's going to ebb and flow, and then each year it might be different. So
Mm-hmm.
I've got that book to draw from always. So whenever it's time to kind of prep, I pull out the book, maybe
Yeah.
have a look at my Pinterest boards, maybe flick through. I do have a book. I use it a little bit, but I must say I use a lot more just based on my own kind of practice and thoughts and feelings. But I do have Circle Round, which is
Oh.
weaving witchcraft for children, and this is by Starhawk, Diane Baker, and Anne
Oh.
Hill, and it's
Yeah.
the authors, all three of them are sharing their stories and their different family traditions. So that's a smorgasbord of different ideas, recipes, games, stories, all sorts of things. So that's
Mm.
really fun. It's really fun to draw from other people's, because you can kind of go, oh, does this work for me? And just
Yeah.
try it out a little bit. And then sometimes you're super inspired and you're going to create a bespoke ceremony. And sometimes we do, and we have for major life transitions, or major events. We've definitely done a full day bells and whistles bespoke ceremony to kind of mark these initiations or rites of passage. So that can
Yeah.
be the whole thing too.
Yeah, thank you for that recommendation. And both the recommendations, the book, but also your own book where you're recording things as they happen. And I think it's one of those things where it's a lot easier to do it as you go than try to remember later on. So
Yep.
yes, future you is thanking past you for that little 5 minutes you spent just jotting a few things down.
Absolutely, because sometimes you're really in the vibe, and sometimes, yeah, like whatever platform you're on, like if it's
Mm,
like screenshots on TikTok or, sometimes you're just in the vibe and you get down that little pathway and you find so many good things. And so
yeah.
if you can just keep all that in a folder somewhere and then you can just bring it out whenever you need it, so helpful. Because,
Yes.
it's that thing, like if you want to go shopping and you like, I want a pair of jeans that looks like this, and they're never there. But then if you're just
So true.
browsing one day, sometimes you're like, oh, that's the thing, that I really want. So sometimes
Yeah.
when the inspiration's there or the resources there, just document them, keep track of
Mm.
them, and then you can pull them out later.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be pretty, it has to be
Mm-mm.
functional and actually help you, because sometimes if we focus too much on it being pretty, it doesn't get done, or not everything goes in there that's important. And that's a really great way of just actually having something to help you and support your practice being consistent, which is, yeah,
Absolutely.
really great advice. So,
And then, sorry, I have to say
mm.
too, you're adding children into the mix. So you might have this gorgeous idea in your head,
Yeah.
and I might float it to her and she just says no. Or she says, actually, I want to do it like this.
Mm.
And we're co-creating. So
Mm.
if I was really rigid about this practice, it's not going to be meaningful. It's a co-creation. It's like that concept that parents would know. You think you're all chill until you start baking muffins with your children. Like you
Yeah.
just got to go with it, and like,
Yeah.
yes, okay, we're going to add sprinkles to this. We're going to do this. Like, what are we going to do? So having that kind of intention, the
Mm.
flavor, you need just to hold the flavor of whatever you're trying to achieve in your mind, and then just kind of
Mm.
go with it, because children are going to bring a different element to the whole mix,
And that will help
depending.
to foster intuition and other things as
Mm-hmm.
well, and autonomy. And it wouldn't be an
Mm-hmm.
authentic practice if we're there like, you must light that candle, sit there
Yeah.
for 5 minutes with your eyes closed and set that intention. It wouldn't be an authentic practice for either of you. So
No.
yeah, that's a good thing to note, because again, everybody talks about life and online being the highlight reel, right? But that's
Mm-hmm.
not realistic. And to have your children sit through every ritual, every single Sabbath is just not going to be practical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an intuitive, flowing practice and
Mm-hmm.
evolving, ever evolving. So you've mentioned the altar. I just wanted to, because I can see your beautiful background. Your house looks
Oh
super
yeah.
fun. So, like, are there other special things you have through the home? Do you have talismans
Yeah.
hung up somewhere?
Yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do. We've got and again, like at the end of a season, it's going to be
Mm.
at its most maximal. There's going to be things hanging all over the place, and like maybe it's like spiders moved into the talismans or things.
Mm-hmm.
We have several spots that I would kind of say are really seasonal. Nature tables and things. So
Mm.
a lot of them need to be kind of cleaned out, and then we start the season quite fresh. So everything looks quite um, more bare at the start of a season, and then it's going to swell to kind of be the end of the season. But yeah, there's decorations and color changes all around. Even like we'll move artwork around and all sorts of things. And we'll also, I do tend to position our lifestyle a little bit more around that too.
Mm.
For example, we're likely to go ice skating in winter because
Yeah.
it's the time to rug up and drink hot drinks and so when I'm thinking about our activities, I actually do a really similar practice for my own adult life, but that's a whole nother topic. But I will plan, yeah, a lot of her activities around the season. So there's certain
Mm.
things, certain activities that we'll do um, around that space. And that brings me back, actually, I wanted to mention this observational practice.
Mm.
We have a
Yes.
lot of different nature spots kind of around us that I would describe for us as sit spots
Mm.
that we're visiting through every season all the time. Like even if it's, maybe it's summer and it's so dry and I know there's no swimming to be had at the creek, we will go to the creek to look at the creek in its really, really dry form.
Yeah.
If it's absolutely pouring with rain and I know the creek's going to be pumping, we're going to go to the creek in the absolute pouring rain. And it's just this concept of just showing up no matter what the weather is. So we're visiting these sit spots again and again and again. And she also has a really strong observational practice. Obviously, she's the daughter of a herbalist. So
Yeah.
she's got a lot of language around plants, especially, and the safety of plants. She completely understands unless she's 1,000,000% identified what something is, she's not
Mm.
going to touch it. She talks to me first and is like, is this this? And so we've got a lot of understanding around the safety of plants. When we're in different spaces, she knows if we're in like a nature reserve, then we're not going to be picking the plants. We're just going to be looking at them versus,
Yeah.
the ones we have in our garden. She has a really good understanding of and knows how to use. And she has a little repertoire of like herbal teas and things that she
Mm.
knows, if she has a really strong relationship with chamomile. So she knows
Oh,
when it's
lovely.
time for a chamomile tea and she can ask for that and even take it in her flask to school. So,
Yeah.
mm,
I was going to ask about the herbalism side of it because that is part and parcel, I'm sure, with your practice being a herbalist, being a naturopath, and her being the daughter of a herbalist, because herbalism, it kind of just works its way into every crack, every crevice of your life. So is there anything other than teas that she does with herbalism?
mm,
Like, does she make her own oils, or does she use like herbs for loose incense, or do you guys go gathering together as part of your practice?
mm. She's big on self-care, so we've definitely done
Okay.
things like aloe vera face masks, and we weave our plants into cooking a lot too. So
Mm.
we are both absolutely on the ice cube trend, like making
Oh,
ice
fun.
cubes for like different seasons and occasions. We've got a whole bunch of edible flowers in our garden, so putting edible flowers like in ice cubes or making cakes or preserves or anything that we can kind of cook and make with edible flowers is really, really
Mm.
fun. She does like it when she can grow her own things and harvest them and eat them. She's
Yeah.
definitely really, really big on that. And, it's that observational practice. It's kind of like, a nature advent calendar. Like you're watching like a tomato go from green to red. She can
Totally.
really identify when things are good to go versus not quite ready yet.
I love that description, like a nature advent calendar. That is very cool because it is something you're looking forward to and counting down to. And And again, that observation is crucial. I think it really is the base of a good kind of traditional spiritual practice. Is it's purely observation. If that's all you have time to do, it's such a good place. It's the only place to start, because it doesn't really matter if you have an athame on your altar, but it does matter if you know whether it's summer or winter outside. um,
Absolutely.
and so my another question I had was in terms of friends. So she probably has friends that are somewhat like-minded because she goes to the Steiner school. But does she have any friends that maybe don't come from a similar background? And how does
Mm,
that play in? And do they do anything together ceremony wise? Or,
mm.
has she had to explain it to anybody?
Yeah, she has, and she's definitely been met with pushback of
Okay.
that's not real, like that's
Oh.
not um what's really happening. And so we've definitely had the chat, and this helps with anything, not just
Mm.
a spiritual practice of it doesn't really matter what that other person thinks. You know that this is true in your heart, and they can, they have every right to their own opinions as well, and then
Mm.
that's totally okay. But maybe her and that friend have something else in common, and they can play that instead and just leave that, to a difference of opinion. So she has worked through that really, really well, which is wonderful. And she definitely
Okay.
does have friends that are similarly aligned. And we have done, little children's circles. And,
Mm.
I've done some really, really stripped back, um, bare basics. One of the funnest ones we did actually was like a bunch of friends who definitely are dipping their toe in lightly, but it was, witches Easter. And so I got them all. I don't know if anyone else is a parent, but there's these like little games that you can get. They're called Hatchimals. And basically, like
Okay.
they're little eggs and something will hatch out of them, mostly really cute things like cute little kitty cats and dragons and things. So I told them a story about the goddess Austere, and they got to open these little Hatchimals and got to eat chocolate. So like they're like, we're so
Yeah.
solid on this. So it's like this whatever weave, but it sticks with them. Like that was the day
Mm.
that we all opened little eggs, and I told that story, and I've told them that story a couple of times now. So it's that repetition of story. But yeah, we can work with it in any setting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
That is fantastic. And it's such a good way to make it, again, make sense for a child and perhaps have something that would work in a group setting with people who have their own backgrounds or traditions and still make it not too, I don't want to use the word offensive, but, make it reasonable and,
Yeah.
acceptable for everybody to join in
Mm.
together to do something
Not
like that. And I
overly
mean,
scriptured. There's
mm,
no kind of this is what's happening. It's like this is just a fun
yeah, and no
activity and a
evangelizing
story.
or anything like
Mm.
that. Um, And so, in like communication with other parents, have you had anything come up about
No,
practice? No, everyone's pretty
no.
chill. That's
Yeah.
great. That's really
Yep.
good. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, well, this has all been really interesting to learn about. And are there any other, I guess, pieces of advice you would have for a parent who perhaps is still maybe even starting out on their own journey, but they want
Mm.
to start weaving in with their kids? Because I know not everybody has started out with a practice kind of like you and I did. I've been walking this path since I was about 15 years old. And so, it's not a new thing for me, and it doesn't sound like it's a new thing for you, but for those who maybe are just getting started,
Mm.
how do you have any tips for how to work this in together while they're still learning?
Yeah, definitely. The first thing that I would say is an observation of yourself and your preferences and your
Mm.
child slash children slash rest of the family and their preferences. Let's say you're like a super sporty family, then a lot of the outdoor activities are just going to lend themselves so much easier. Like if we're talking about sit spots and things, if you're a hiking family, then just going hiking and just having that observational practice, and you possibly already have that observational practice of knowing a lot of the names of the birds in the area, knowing how the ecosystem looks differently in different seasons. And a lot of that is relationship, to country and to the earth around you. And the more of a dialogue you have and the more of a knowing and an understanding, the less sort of foreign it all feels.
Mm.
And that's weaving in a really sort of fundamental practice there. Likewise, maybe you might be a lot more crafty and a lot more, enjoy the home thing. So whatever is really feels like an easy next step.
Yeah.
And your body can really judge that, like if I said to you, all right, tomorrow we're doing a 20-kilometer hike, straight away, like everything in your body is going, no.
Yeah.
But if it's hey, I've got some dandelions in my backyard. Would you like to come out and harvest them with me? If that feels like an easy resonant yes in your body, then we're going for ease. We want this
Mm.
to be enhancing. If it's a practice for practice sake, then that's not really going to be enhancing your experience. So going with
Mm.
things that feel easy, accessible, repeatable, and feels like it might be nourishing. At the same point, sometimes we do have to have a little check in with resistance. And that's that whole concept of, if you know that yoga makes you feel really good, but it's like an hour before your yoga class and you're like, no, I just want to stay here and scroll on my phone. But
Yeah.
once you get on that mat, you're like, why was I resistant to this? This is
Mm.
great. So sometimes we have resistance because we're just a bit tired. But
Yeah.
once you've got that dialogue of knowing, no, I know that when I do this, it feels good.
Yeah.
Also, once we've got that flavor of children being involved too, I read this like wonderful blog article once, and it was this
Mm.
concept of creating spaces that are a site of mutual fulfillment.
Oh.
Now, if you love going to the beach, but your children keep running towards the ocean like maniacs, and then you're very stressed, that's not going to be a side of mutual fulfillment. Whereas maybe like you've got older children and you love going to the beach because you can read a book because they're going to build sandcastles for, 2 hours uninterrupted. That's a side of mutual fulfillment. So if you can create ritual spaces or practices within
Mm.
this kind of flavor that is going to be a side of mutual fulfillment, for example, if you've got children under 3, live flame is probably not a solid choice for
Mm.
you.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
If
um,
you weren't
you,
aware of that, that's some good advice.
yeah, because you've got to sometimes troubleshoot these things, especially if you're replicating what you found on the internet. Is anything going to
Yeah.
be eaten, touched, pushed over, stepped on? We need to really troubleshoot all those
Mm.
things. That brings us back to that story of I had with the first kind of use the spirals were twigs on a table with little figurines, and the candle was
Mm.
electric. So that was like totally no room for error there.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I guess my summary there is what feels good for you as a practice, what when
Mm.
when you're reading, when you're looking at Witch Talk or Pinterest or reading things and seeing
Mm.
these different practices, what feels good for you? What do you think? Oh, I want to do that, or that feels really aligned for me. And
Yeah.
then does that work for the rest of your family? Observing your children, their kind of behaviors, what they do and don't enjoy, and what they're going to get on board with. Often children are just down for a vibe. If it's a
Yeah.
party, they're like, I'm there, we're doing this, great. They're normally
Yeah.
pretty optimistic about things, like
If it involves
especially if it's
chocolate, yes.
it involves like snacks, activities, like down, they're normally
Yeah.
pretty eager beaver for these things. So a lot of it's an easy kind of sell.
Yeah, and I think that's a very naturopathic approach too, is like meeting yourself where you're at. So just knowing, and again, that perfectionist thing comes in. You don't have to exactly copy something. So if it is a live flame and that doesn't make sense for your family, definitely don't do it just because that's what the tutorial said to do, and that's what
Yeah.
this online influence is doing. Even if their kids are the same age, if you know your kid's going to grab that flame, it's not a vibe for you. Um, and just finding that observation and really knowing yourself first, knowing yourself, knowing your family dynamics. That's such good advice, to make it an easy next step, as you said. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, and it doesn't have to be something super extreme. It's just how can you actually make it sustainable, which I talk about sustainability with spiritual practice a lot. How can you make it sustainable for your family and enjoyable? It's almost like when you're talking about that, a little Venn diagram popped up in my head of things that I enjoy and things my kids enjoy, and then what's something that, that place of mutual fulfillment, where does that land in the middle, where we have things that we can both do and enjoy at the same time. Yeah, that is a really great bit of food for thought, and I'll definitely be doing that as well as my little guy gets a bit older. um so how can people work with you, reach you? What kind of offerings do you have available if people wanted to get to know you better and more on a one-to-one or group setting?
Yeah, so at the moment, I am practicing online for one-on-one
Mm.
naturopathic consultations. I'm also teaching and I am offering these seasonal dance practices. So if you're local to Brisbane, ecstatic dance for families, and I also do an expression of just for the women's folk. It's called After Dark. So that one's also an ecstatic dance. I would be open as well to doing a little bit more family sort of based practice. And if there's
Cool.
interest, potentially doing some more offerings around, it's kind of popped up here and there, offerings for children and families. So
Mm.
potentially, if that's interesting to you, maybe just reach out to me on my Instagram or on my website because, yeah, potentially I've got, quite a body of work that I just do anyway. And if that's interesting to people, I'd be happy to maybe
Yeah.
create a bit more around that.
Yeah, really cool. And your Instagram and website is not your name. It is, am I pronouncing this right?
No, no.
Ignaria
So just,
Wellness?
yeah, just to go totally rogue. So yes, I also have a chosen name and that is Ignaria. So my Instagram handle is Ignaria_wellness. And my website also, but I guess we'll link that a bit easier, but it just spells exactly as it sounds. It's Latin based. And I use that for a lot of my creative pursuits. A lot of people know me just name to name as that, but my, I guess, muggle name is Holly, and that is what I use for my teaching and, my legal kind of practicing name for naturopathy.
Okay, amazing. And so, thank you so much for joining me and talking through this. I know it was really helpful for me to kind of get an image of what my future might look like. And also, I know that this is going to be so interesting as a lot of the people who listen to this podcast are parents, and particularly parents of younger children, probably around the age of your daughter. So, I know they don't know this is coming, and I know it's going to be so exciting. And then I've got a talk coming up very soon too on herbalism for kids, I think, as well. So that's going to be really cool. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. And it was great to get to know you a little bit better. And yeah, we will talk again soon, I hope. And if people want to get in touch with you, they now have that, and we'll link it in the show notes too. And yeah, just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed being able to just have a chat about all the things that we do. It was really fun.
Yeah, cool. So much. Thank you so much, Holly.
Thank you. Bye.